This
Really
conference
appreciate
will
the
now be
opportunity
recorded.
here. You guys approached me, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Visitor Center approached me to give a bit of a perspective that may or may not be commonly known around the Great Lakes or the industry. As the presenter there told everyone, I do have a YouTube channel, and I try to share what it's like working and living on these Great Lakes freighters. And it's not always the easiest thing, but it is rewarding. And there's really nothing else I'd rather do at this stage of my life. I just love it. And you're going to see from some of the pictures that I have here that I brought with me, it's going to reflect that. So, what I usually get the most questions on is how do I get started? Or where did I start? Or how did I get into the industry? So, I started basically from zero, just like everybody else. And I went to this school after high school. This is the Great Lakes Marine Training Center in Owen Sound. It's a campus run by Georgian College, and they have the marine navigation and marine engineering programs in it. So I spent 3 years here. It's not a regular college program there. It's compacted a little. Some other programs in Canada, they are 4 year programs, and this is a 3 year program. So that means that we didn't get reading weeks or some of the holidays that regular college kids would get. We went straight through. So there'd be a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, but sometimes when we were at the school, we'd be the only ones in there. It'd just be the Marine students. Now they do have other programs here. They got a great culinary program and nursing program, and they're really fantastic. Actually, the culinary program was great because they would have dinner every Friday at the school, so that was nice. But this is where I started, and I did 3 years. So the way the program works is you do 4 or 8 months at school, learning all kinds of different things. The first year we learned about radar, seamanship. We did some astronav, mathematics, and things like that. So that was the first 8 months, and then we go immediately into our work term. So it's set up almost like an apprenticeship where you have to get a certain amount of time on board a ship in order to qualify for the licenses. So we did 8 months at school, and you go straight into 4 months on the boat. So my first work term, I went and I joined the Saginaw, which is a pretty popular boat. I'm sure everyone here knows it. So that was my very first ship, and I joined it in Sarnia, Ontario, at Cargill, and I showed up to the ship, and all I could think of is, what did I get myself into? So I climbed up the ladder. I was about 40 feet from the deck, or from the dock up onto the deck, with a suitcase in hand. And there was I'll never forget it. There was a man there to greet me. He was one of the wheelsmen, and he was from Newfoundland. And I never met anyone from Newfoundland before, so I didn't understand anything that he said. He took my suitcase and went up to the room, and he showed me where I was going to be living, right next to the captain. And the rest there is history. I spent 4 months there. I learned lots of different things, and it was a really eye-opening experience being on the Saginaw. So then, after doing the 4 months on the Saginaw, I went back to school. I guess my grades were pretty good because the co-op coordinator came to me during the second school year, and she just asked me, "Hey Tim, how'd you like to work on a cruise ship?" And I said, "Okay, what do I got to do to get on a cruise ship?" She's like, "Well, not really anything. Just fill this form out." So I filled the form out. I didn't think much of it. I went back to my classes. So second year, we did a lot of continuations and building on from what we learned in the first year. So there was Ocean Nav, which built on Astronav and Seamanship 2, and another math course. And we had um, some chart work and that kind of stuff. So as the year went on, so this is second year, it's 8 months. So 8 months was the first school year, 4 months at sea, then 8 months again back in the school. So as we're getting close to the 8 months has come and finished for the second school year. Co-op coordinator came to me. She's like, "Well, Tim, you're on a cruise ship. Here's the joining instructions. You're going to be joining the Sapphire Princess in, where did I join it? Seattle, Washington, in 2 weeks." And that was it. That's how I got hired on a cruise line. So I went and I joined the Sapphire Princess with a couple other guys that I knew from the college there. There was three of us that went, two from the deck side and one from the engine. And I spent 4 months going from Seattle, Washington up to Alaska and back. Now, um, this was a pretty eventful work term. It really opened my eyes to a lot of things, especially working with international crews. I think we had the Sapphire Princess, we had, I want to say, 1,200 crew on that one, and they're from every corner of the world. So we had, am I back now? All right. Um, so on the Sapphire Princess, I had a pretty unique experience in Juneau, Alaska. So what had happened is I don't know if anyone is familiar here with the marine life that exists up in Alaska, but there's a lot of whales. And apparently, one night we had a collision with one, and it remained stuck on the bow. Now you can Google this. This would have been 2000, I want to say 2010. So if you Google Sapphire Princess and Juneau, Alaska, and whale, you'll see pictures of it. It was not a great experience, but it was a good one for me to have. So what had happened was, I guess when whales pass on from this life to the next, they tend to float, and apparently that's how we struck one and collected it on the bulbous bow. We had to get a tugboat company to come to the ship and remove it for us because the port of Juneau said that we couldn't come in with a whale stuck to the bow, which fair game. So that was my first 4 months there in my second work term, and then I went home for a week after those 4 months in the Sapphire Princess, and then I joined the Dawn Princess down in. I think I joined it in Sydney, Australia. So I spent the second 4 months of my 8 month work term there in Australia, going around Australia and the South Pacific and New Zealand and all those places. And I had a really great time there because most of the deck officers were from Canada. I was the only one there from my school. All the other deck officers there, they were from BCIT, but we were all from Canada. And that was a really strange thing because most of the deck officers that I was used to working with were from Italy or England. So it was a nice change to have Canadian deck officers. So I spent 4 months there going around in the South Pacific and Australia and New Zealand. It was great. And then I came back to Canada. I came back to finish my third year now. So we've done 8 months at school, 4 months at sea, 8 months at school, 8 months at sea, and now I'm going to do another 6 months of school. No, 5 months of school, I think it was. So anyway, that was the last year. So we did 5 months of school, and then we had to finish whatever sea time we had left. So during the program, the way it was laid out, we needed to complete all of our classes, and we had to receive a grade of 70% or higher in order to get the whatever exemptions were available and to pass the class. Another thing that was very special about Marine School as opposed to other schools is there was a mandatory attendance. So if we didn't meet the mandatory attendance, we had to retake classes. So that was another catch. So I finished my third year, and then I still needed about 3 or 4 weeks of sea time at the end. Just the way the scheduling worked out, I was a little bit short. Now I was working for a cruise line, and they didn't want to fly me out for only a couple of weeks. So I went back out and I did my third uh, sea phase with them, with the cruise line, fourth sea phase total, third with the cruise line on the Sea Princess, and I spent where were we in the Sea Princess? Spent 3 months in the Caribbean on that one. So that was a good time. And I came back, got my license, and progressed through the ranks. So that's kind of where I started, how the schooling works, and what kind of things are available to those people in the industry. We learn a lot of different things, and I can tell you, nothing in school prepares you for what you're going to experience on the ship. That's why that 365-day work term is so important. Now, I tell cadets this all the time, and it was as true for me as it was for anyone else. And those of you that have followed me on the YouTube channel and talked to me in the comments there, you've probably heard me say this. But people go to school for 3 years and they learn all kinds of great things about the marine industry, and then they come out on a ship and they don't know anything. And that was as true for me as it was for anyone else. Because when I got my mate's ticket, it was like I was stepping on the boat for the first time. Expectations change when you get certified and licensed, and nothing you learn in school or during your cadet time really prepares you for the gravity of that impact when all of a sudden you're making decisions on behalf of 1,200 crew and 3,500 passengers while driving the ship through the whatever body of water that you're on. So it was an eye-opening experience. From there, I worked my way up, and I got to be captain. So that was a school. Now, I had a lot of fun on cruise lines. As you can see, I went to a lot of different places. That was me as second officer in the Caribbean. That's my wife down there. We're in Venice. I met her on a cruise ship, and that's a picture of me in Easter Island. So I did take a passenger ship over to Easter Island, and whenever we're not on watch on the ship, we're allowed to do pretty much whatever we want as long as the work is being done and everything is up to date. So if there was ever a port that I wanted to get off and explore, like Easter Island, I would make sure that the days leading up to that, everything that was assigned to me was completed and well done already. And then I was able to do pretty much whatever I want. You learn a lot of different things in going around the world. Um, like, for example, you can't wear camouflage in Barbados. That's against the law. Uh, in Turkey, all the stones in Turkey are protected heritage sites. So you can't go to Turkey and steal a rock as a souvenir that you were in Turkey. The reasoning that I heard about the stones in Turkey was that all the stones there are part of the historic roads that used to bind Europe, and so they're all protected. And I found out about the stones in Turkey because there was a couple on a honeymoon on the passenger ship, and they tried to take a stone, and I guess law enforcement caught them, and they wouldn't let them back on the boat. They went to jail. So you learn a lot of different things. You learn how to be an ambassador for the country that you're from, and you learn why it's so important to respect all these different countries' heritages and their way of life. And the more that you spend existing in these places and going around and learning from all around the world, the more you realize we're all pretty much just the same, trying to get by. Whether doesn't matter what flag it is or where we're from, everyone's just trying to do the best they can with what they got. Well, that was my experience anyway, and I'm sure other people have other ones. So after I spent 6 or 7 years on the cruise line going around, I decided that the cruise industry wasn't where I wanted to continue my career at. That decision was based off a lot of different things. One is the most fun part about being on a ship to me was the ship handling. And that's not something that I was going to get unless I was a pilot in the international trade, because usually the pilots come on and then they do all that sort of thing. So the pilot's job was really the one that I thought I would most enjoy. But I also don't like living out of a suitcase. So I wanted to have my own boat and I wanted to do the piloting. And that's where the Great Lakes kind of really fit in for me. So after I left the cruise line, I was waiting to get a job on one of the Laker companies, and I took something at Maid of the Mist. So I went from driving these big, massive cruise ships to driving 500 people up to the Horseshoe Waterfall in Niagara Falls and back. So that was a lot of fun. So that's a picture there of one of the captains that I worked with. I was first mate at the time going through here. And that's a picture of the Horseshoe Falls from just outside the wheelhouse. I think that was Maid of the Mist 7, I think. Anyway, I spent 4 months there. Great bunch of people. If I hadn't been looking for something with a little bit more tonnage, Maid of the Mist company, they really do a great job looking after all their people, and I had so much fun there. It was really a great time. Then I got hired by Lower Lakes as first mate, and that's me in the cargo hold of the Cuyahoga, doing my cargo hold inspection before we start loading. And then that's me on top of the mast, the forward mast of the Robert S. Pearson, changing out the block for the ladder. Now, when you're first mate, it's a bit of a leadership role. I'm responsible at the first mate level. I was responsible for maintenance, crew management, and pretty much everything on deck, loading, unloading, and all that stuff. So I was up the mast that day because none of the other deck crew wanted to climb up the mast and change the block, but we had to change it or else we couldn't use the forward ladder anymore. So the responsibility kind of fell to me. So I just kind of went up there and changed it myself. And then that rock. So there was another first mate on the Pearson. That's from the Pearson. So we used to do the Colburn Clarkson run. And from Colburn to Clarkson, it was maybe a 7 hour trip, 10 hours to load and 8 to 10 hours to unload. And when we're unloading, you just sit in this control room on the Pearson. There's a camera with a screen, and the camera is at the end of the boom and is pointed down into this hopper, a funnel where we unload all this stone. And that's the size of the stone that we unload. It's fairly large. And my relief, the other first mate used to tell me every time at handover, you know, Tim, if you stare into the rocks long enough, you'll see your future. All right, I'm back again. All right, so yeah, he made this rock. That was Rocky. That was our mascot on the Robert S. Pearson. Uh, so when I first got hired by Lower Lakes, I was on the Robert S. Pearson doing the Colburn Clarkson run. Then I went to the Mississauga. I had some time there. Then I went to the Cuyahoga first mate, and then I was eventually promoted to captain. So this picture here, that's last week at the Captains and Chiefs conference. We have a night where we all take pictures in our uniforms. So that's mine. It's one of the very rare times that I'll put that on. But that picture next to it, I was promoted to captain in December 2020. And this was the very first arrival that I did on my own. That picture makes it look a lot nicer than what it actually was. So first time going on my own, I was up there in Sault Ste. Marie. This is coming down the Canadian Channel, going to the ore dock or going to the coal dock. I think we're going to the coal dock. Anyway, couldn't see anything. All the boys were taken out or off station. So this is what I had signed up for. When I told you that I was in for ship handling and leading the ship, this is what I was looking for. Now, don't get me wrong, I was a nervous wreck going in here for the very first time, making my very first dock, and it's snowing sideways. And you can see by the windsock there hanging from the spear pole, it was pretty windy too. So after that one, I figured nothing would really be harder than that. But yeah, it was great. So I put this one up because I felt the same way that day as the day I got my license and stepped foot on the boat for the first time as a mate, and I felt the same way stepping foot on the Saginaw for the first time. It was a very similar feeling. I felt like, what have I gotten myself into? So that's me. That's where I kind of came from and my journey to captain. Now, I understand that there was a District 3 pilot on last month with the U.S. Army Corps Engineers Visitor Center, and he had a really great story too, Captain Lararson. I was impressed when I was watching that one. And he had a very fast career. I think it was 6 years from the time he got out of school till he got promoted. I took a little bit longer. I think I was 12 years, 10 or 12 years before I got mine. But yeah, so I got this picture here. When people think of the Great Lakes, this is usually what they sort of envision: Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Erie, Lake Ontario. Now, District 3, where that pilot operates, that's Lake Huron, Lake Michigan, Lake Superior. That is a very, very large district, and it has a lot of very intricate ports. Now, I went through this, and this is how we kind of look at it. We look at it a little bit different. There's Lake Superior. There's the Keweenaw River there, the river that flows through the Keweenaw. The name's eluding me at the moment. But that's not a very common place for us, or at least that I usually go to. But the rest is sort of how we break it down. So Georgian Bay, you got Perry Sound, Fisher Harbor, Midland, Midland, we don't really go too much anymore. I think CSL operates there a little bit. North Channel, that's where all the stone comes from, where a majority of the stone, it comes from the North Channel there, which is just above Lake Huron, and then the surrounding area. So you got places like Meldrum Bay, Thessalon, Bruce Mines, you got Drummond Island, Rogers City or Calcite, Stoneport, and Cedarville, and Port Inland. There's a lot of stone up there that gets shipped out on board all kinds of vessels. And then you got the Fox River over there in Green Bay. The Fox River, that is a uniquely challenging place. So uh, the Fox River has a long approach to it. It takes, I think it takes me about 2 hours to get into the slip from Green Bay once you enter the buoys there. Now, it is a buoyed channel. There is ranges. Longtail Point, there's a shoal off there you got to watch out for. And once you get in to the Fox River, you're actually physically surrounded by land in close proximity. You have to turn the ship, and usually they want you to back into the Fox River, what do they call it? Fox River Dock Company. Um, and it can be challenging because the current that flows out of that river, it presents a unique planning requirement, let's say. So it takes you a couple hours to get in. So you have to try and time it so that when the current is at its lowest, you're pulling into the dock. Now there is tugs there. There's 2G tugs, and they do a great job. But because of the small space, they're not free to move around everywhere. Basically, they line up down on the downriver side of the ship and just kind of hold you in position while you get into the slip. Uh, so that's actually one of the places I like going because it's a bit challenging and you have to really be on top of things when you pull in there. Calumet River is another one that I highlighted. Now, the Calumet River is one of the busiest rivers like it in the Great Lakes. And it's not just for Lakers or salties or that. They have these river barges that run up and down the river. And man, they fly around in there. They're great. They push barges up and down. Now, because of that, the barges present a unique challenge because they line the barges up on the side of the river. And I think they tie them on with dental floss, to be honest with you, because if you go by with any bit of speed, they're pulled right off the dock. Now, I'm sure it's probably not dental floss, but at least that's what it feels like when you go by and one of these barges breaks loose. Now, that's not a common thing, but it's happened enough while I've been in the area that it's definitely noticeable, and I'm very mindful of my speed going by these barges. So not only do they break off, but they also line the river and make the river narrower, which is another unique challenge there. And they're constantly moving around, and they're never in the same place twice. It's actually really neat little ecosystem they have down there in the Calumet River. And then we can move over to Saginaw. Saginaw is another great place. It's one of my favorites. It's a long way in, it's a long way out, and you're in the Boyd Channel. Once you enter Saginaw Bay, you get into that Boyd Channel for about I don't know, about 45 minutes to an hour, and then once you're all warmed up from the Boyd Channel, which is a straight line, you get into some turns and then some bridges, and then you get into what I always call the slalom track, because it's a curved river that bends around and has a lot of twists and turns, and very rarely are you going straight. And as you're proceeding through this river, there's buoys on either side guiding you through. So it's almost like if anyone's watched downhill skiing, there. I don't know why that keeps happening. So anyway, yeah, Saginaw is a great place, a great bunch of people. I've never been disappointed by any of the bridges there. The bridge operators there are fantastic. The people that maintain the bridges in Saginaw are also fantastic. So that's a challenge that maybe not everyone is aware of. That these bridges, if they don't open, you're driving a small apartment building, and now all of a sudden you have to stop because the way's blocked. So when I was being trained, I was always told never commit to a bridge that isn't open, and I'll get to that when we get down to the Maumee because they got me down there. But the bridge operators there, they all, I don't know if they all talk to each other, but they make it a very smooth and efficient process going up and down that river. And I'm always very thankful to them, both because they open with enough time for me to get through and not have to slow down and stop. Also because they're reliable. I don't think I've ever been to Saginaw and one of the bridges hasn't opened. They've called me a few times and they said they were having problems and asked me to slow down, which is great. That communication there is important because anyone here has watched my maneuvering poster video. The Algoma Buffalo takes about 6 ship lengths to stop, and it's 630 feet. And that stopping distance can be amplified by shallow water, which the river is, also by the loss of propeller surface area, which we have on the Buffalo. A couple of the blades are not complete anymore, let's say. So yeah, the Saginaw River is an interesting one. And whenever I've trained people in there, I've always told them, don't worry too much about going outside because it's all sand and mud. It's kind of like bowling with the gutter guards down, right? If you go outside the channel there and you're not doing a ridiculous speed, chances are everything's fine. You just beach it for a few minutes, and then you can do inspections and everything and sound the tanks, and usually it's fine. Um, Another unique thing about the Saginaw River that is not really something that's common to everywhere else is that at the end of the river, a lot of ships, what they do is they'll put their bow into the mud on the riverbank, and then they'll use the main engine with hard over port rudder to push the stern up into the river, uh, and in order to turn around, because there's not a lot of space in that river to turn around anywhere. If you check out some of my time lapse videos, you can really see that there's very few areas where you can turn around, and even where you can turn around, it's not a whole lot of space. And then we get down to Detroit, St. Clair River. So these two places are very, very different. The St. Clair River and the St. Mary's River. Actually, I'll get back to the St. Mary's River later. But the St. Clair River and the St. Mary's River, they're very different. So St. Clair is it's there's not a lot of navigational aids there. There's buoys and stuff, but St. Mary's has got a lot of ranges and things like that that help keep you in line on the channels. Not sure why there's less navigational aids there, probably because it's wider. The St. Clair River is pretty wide, although there is a fair bit of current, as I'm sure a lot of you know, going under the Blue Water Bridge. Detroit River is another great spot. This is there's a few branches there in the Detroit River. You can go in behind Pesh Island where there's a ton of current. A few ships have run aground there over the years. Actually, as recently as 5 or 6 years ago, I think there was a couple boats that ran aground trying to get in over to the East Windsor Stone Dock behind Pesh Island. And then there's the Rouge River, and trying to get into the Rouge River is not an easy thing. If you see someone entering the Rouge River downbound, as in coming from Detroit and just turning in rather than proceeding upbound and turning in, they're usually pretty spot on ship handler. That's not something that I'm willing to do yet in my career, but I've seen a lot of guys do it. I see those interlake guys, and they are going down there 3 or 4 knots, and they just turn straight in. Blows me away every time. And they got some really good ship handlers over there. And then we can get down to the Maumee, and I've had more problems with bridges in the Maumee River than I think anywhere else. And I don't know what causes it. I don't know anything behind the scenes there, but it's one of the very challenging things of that river. Now, it's not a particularly narrow river by any means. It can have a little bit of current, but it's the bridges there that make it the challenge. Now, there's nowhere else in the Great Lakes where a train stops on the bridge, effectively blocking the river because the crew on the train have to change out. They do crew changes there, stopped on the bridge while ships are waiting. That's the only place I've ever been told to stop because they have to do a crew change. And it doesn't happen once or twice. I usually get 1 or 2 a year where they're stopped on the bridge. Now, it didn't happen to me last year, but I didn't spend a lot of time going up the Maumee as I did in previous years. But all these things that maybe not a lot of people consider present challenges for us. Another one is the road bridges, so the Craig Street and the Martin Luther King Bridge. Now, I don't know if there always seems to be some sort of maintenance issue there. Uh, I've been through there a few times where the bridge hasn't opened. I've even been talking to the operator, and 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm treading water waiting for the bridge to open, and he's called everybody on his phone list, and nobody's answering. And of course, it's usually a holiday, like the Fourth or Christmas or anything like that, and so no one's picking up the phone, and I'm treading water, pointed downbound, waiting for this bridge to open. The longest I've had to wait for either one of those is probably 4 hours, I think was the longest. So you can imagine trying to hold the ship in position between two bridges, waiting for one to open. That's not a very common thing, but it's something that we have to be ready for. And then the NS South Bridge, that is a very busy bridge. I think there's less time with trains not on it than on it. Now, I had a unique one here with the NS South Bridge in the Maumee, where we were at Anderson's Cay, so the dock right next to the bridge, and I called them and I said I needed 30 minutes to get off the dock, turn around, and then I'd be clear, and they could close again in 30 minutes. So let me know when you have a 30 or 40-minute opening, and then I'll let go and we'll turn and we'll get out of here. No pressure. And that's the way I always do it with that bridge, because I know that they are busy and I know that they take orders from somebody that's not really on site. So they have a bridge operator, but they can only open the bridge if the dispatcher says that they're all clear. So one time I was on the Cuyahoga, actually, my old ship, and I left Anderson's Cay after they told me they had a 40-minute window for me. I left Anderson's Cay. I was going up to turn around, and I started pointing back at the bridge, and it's closing now. So so I called them and I told them, hey, listen, we're coming now. We need the bridge open. And there was some discussion there, but eventually they did open. There's not a whole lot of room for us to stop and wait there, especially when we're pointed downbound with the current. So bridge challenges and narrow channels are pretty common when you're handling a ship. And that's not something that maybe a lot of people talk about, that I wanted to make sure that I highlighted here. Cuyahoga River, that's another great spot. I love that one too. Bridge operators, they're pretty good there, but they have maintenance issues sometimes. Something that I've seen in Cleveland that maybe doesn't exist anywhere else is I've been in there once, and they had one bridge operator for Center Street, Columbus Road, Carter Road. I didn't go up to the West Third that time. So they had one bridge operator. So he had to open and close the bridge for me to get through, get in his car, drive to the next bridge, open and close the next bridge, and then continue on. So that was a pretty unique one. I also had, I'm pretty sure I caught NS2 in there sleeping one time. We had to tie up on the river dock there for a little while because the bridge wasn't opening. I couldn't get him on the phone, couldn't get him on the radio. What I ended up doing was I took the ship up right next to the bridge, and I held the horn down until I got a response. So, I'm sure the people of Cleveland weren't that happy with me at 2 o'clock in the morning holding the whistle down for about 30 seconds, but they got the bridge open. And that's something maybe not a lot of people talk about. Now, I'm going to get into this St. Mary's River here. Now, I don't know if you can tell where we are in this picture, but we are on the West Nevis Channel, which is right before we could turn into the rock cut. So this stretch of water here, we are steering 181.5 degrees true, and on the green ranges that you can see down there at the end. Now, just before we get to those green ranges, we have to turn to port, and then we line up the rock cut. Now, as you can see, it's snowing, it's windy, and the river's full of ice, and we have to steer about a half a degree accuracy on this course here, 181.5, and get down to the end of the channel. So there's a lot of specific Great Lakes challenges that maybe aren't in many other places of the world, and international shipping really doesn't have it. So we're here, we're trying to get down, and I remember this trip specifically, which is why I put this picture up, because one of the green buoys was off station and in the middle of the channel. So now we're in a channel where there's hard rock on either side, steering 181.5, windy, snowing, ice all around, and now there's a navigational mark off station directly in front of us. We managed to get around it with great effort. It wasn't one of my best maneuvers, but we didn't touch bottom and we didn't uh, pull the green boy into the propeller. So it's this job is not always easy, but I got to tell you, it felt pretty good getting around that green boy without picking it up in the prop and not touching the bottom. So a lot of excitement, a lot of pride, and I think that's why a lot of people stay with this career. Now, another thing that maybe not a lot of people know is some of these channels in the St. Mary's River, although they're very well marked, they have some of the best marked channels of the Great Lakes in the St. Mary's. The ranges are always uh, well looked after, maintained. If there's a light out, that usually gets changed pretty quickly. The VTS in this area is very on the ball as well. They'll always tell you if there's something off station or something's happening, and they will call in to check in with you unprompted. Sometimes they'll call in and say, "What's the visibility like? Oh, we had a report that this buoy was off station. It was replaced. Is it still there? Is it in the right place?" Those sort of things. So VTS there is really great, and that helps a lot because there's the middle Nevis Channel. So on the other side of Nevis Island, the channel split in two. So there's the deep water, and then there's the shallow water. The shallow water, I think, is 21 feet, and the deep water is 28 to 29 feet. I can't remember. I always get it mixed up. Uh, so if on these large ships, that's the Manitoulin. On these larger ships, ballast draft is more than 21 feet. So if the water level is close to datum, then we'll run aground if we're on the wrong side. And it's the green side that's the deep side. So we have to make sure that we're always minty green or well on the green side before we get into some of these channels. They do have split ranges, so they have deep water and shallow water ranges, which is fantastic, and I use them quite often. So yeah, there's a lot of meteorological challenges, but then there's also a lot of ship handling challenges. It's always interesting no matter where you go, and no two places are the same. Everywhere's different, and every port, every river, everything has its own kind of soul, and it just makes it very unique. And it's very rare, at least in my travels, being all over the world, where you get such a concentration of different geographic areas like this. So some of the places we go, I spoke about Saginaw and the Saginaw River being all sand and mud and no problem. Now we're in the St. Mary's and it's all rock. So you don't want to, it's not bowling with the gutter guards down there. You're actually in danger of really doing serious damage to the ship if you venture outside the channel there too much. So along with all of this static challenges, so let's say bridges and river bottoms and current and meteorological stuff, now you add people in. So this picture to the left is from the Manitoulin, and I was backing in or heading out. I can't remember now. Anyway, the other ship there, that's the Michipicoten. So I was going around the Michipicoten. We had about 40 feet between us. So rather than waiting for them because they had just pulled in, they were going to be several hours. I just went around them. So there's always the traffic dynamic and adding people into it, and that's just another layer on the onion that is Great Lakes shipping. I was able to get out just fine. We had no problems or get in. I can't remember which now, if I was going in or going out. But yeah, so we're tight quarters situations around other ships. That's not common everywhere else in the world. If you're this close to somebody else, international shipping, you probably screwed up somewhere, and it was probably about a mile or five ago. The other picture there to the right, that's a picture of the Cuyahoga. That's a picture of the Cuyahoga going up the Cuyahoga River, passing through Center Street. Now that bridge is Center Street Bridge. It rotates there. It's actually one of the narrower ones, if I remember correctly. And we have about 10 feet on either side of the ship. And that was on the Cuyahoga. The Cuyahoga was 60 feet wide. So it was about 80 or 100 feet wide there. I can't remember now. Anyways, pretty narrow bridge. That's the first one when you're going up the Cuyahoga River, not the old riverbed, but the river that goes up to the steel plant there. And yeah, it's a tight squeeze. That was a good one. But you go up that river, especially in the summer, and it is full of people. So not only do you have these narrow bridges, as you can see, trying to squeeze through there, now you've got people on paddle boards and kayaks and pleasure craft, and they're all trying to get around you. So you throw people in the mix, and it's that extra level. Now, something that's very unique to Cleveland is they have this thing in the late summer called the Festival of Lights, and they actually shut the river down. But after I've gone in after they shut the river down, it's still so busy, and they got boats rafted 3 or 4. Like when I say boats, I mean pleasure craft rafted 3 or 4 wide on either side of the river, and you're trying to get up there, and maybe you're loaded with stone or coal or ore, whatever you're bringing up there, and it's nerve wracking to say the least. So this is two other spots. Now, the picture to the left, that is from the Manitoulin, and that's in the Buffalo River. So we just left ADM and we're proceeding out. Now you can see to the right, there's all these small, we call them the tiki boats, the bar boats, and they will be operational pretty soon after that picture was taken. And they'll be sometimes going up and down the river. And then to the left, now this is something that's I've only ever seen in Buffalo, and I'm not sure how it's allowed. But to left, you can see two small floating docks, and then there's a platform just up from the two small floating docks. That's a stage. So they have bands playing on that stage at night while ships are going by. So another layer of complexity onto an already pretty narrow river. So yeah, I remember going by there and waving to the guitarist and the guy on the drums. It's just, if you mess up, you put the thruster the wrong way, everybody on that is going for a swim. And it's not always, these places are not always easy places to get in and out of. And then you add things like that on, and it's just an extra level of complexity. Tugs help you through there. Okay, so yes, kind of. Tugs aren't what a lot of people think that they are. It's not. Tugs are not uh, an all-purpose solution. If I'm using a tug, I need him for a specific purpose to help the ship get through wherever it needs to get through. Um, I do usually take one going into Buffalo because we have to go astern. Now, most of the money on the ship, now when I say money, I mean the expensive bits are at the back, right? That's where the rudder is, that's where the propeller is, right? So for me to have a tug attached to the stern is uh, additional safety layer that I add on to the maneuver. Now, they the best way I can describe it is tugs know how to maneuver tugs, and then the pilot or the ship captain in this place knows how to maneuver a ship. They're two very different things. Now, Nick, who is a great tug captain, is in Buffalo, and Nick does a great job. And Nick and I, after that year that we had there on the Manitoulin, Nick and I didn't really have to communicate that much. He knew what I wanted. I knew what he needed. I knew where he was going to be. It was very seamless. The teamwork there that comes with time. That's not how it started, but that's how we ended up. Actually, I think that I was on the Manitoulin when Nick did his last trip training before he got given the keys to the tug, and yeah, that was a pretty great experience. I got a lot of respect for Nick. Nick is very good. There's other very good G tug captains like Nick, but particularly Nick in Buffalo stands out to me a lot. So anyway, yeah, so the tug is an extra layer of safety, like a safety net. It doesn't remove the risk, and it's not an all-purpose solution, but it does help manage the risk so that if something does happen, then it's not a complete catastrophe. As you can imagine, backing through this river, they're behind us in that picture, but astern of the ship, it's concrete walls on both sides, and it's a hundred and something degree turn in a very small space. Now, if I was backing in by myself, sure, the Manitoulin has a stern thruster, but it's not all stern thrusters are created equal. So it's not a very powerful one. It's enough to move it around a little bit, but it's not enough to do what Nick could do with a tug. So I will always recommend anyone backing into the river there, take a tug on the stern. Nick's a great guy, and he does a great job. So yeah, it's not an all-purpose solution. It's, think of it like wearing a helmet when you're riding a bike. Sure, you could ride the bike. If you're on an open field and you're riding a bike, maybe you don't want to wear a helmet. But if you're going to, you know, downtown Toronto and you're riding a bike, maybe having a helmet on is a little extra bit of safety that you can have for yourself. And that's how I approach tug use. They're not an all-purpose solution, but they create that extra layer of safety if you need it. How many times would you say you go there yearly? I was into Buffalo every 1 or 2 months, thereabouts. So yeah, we had a great time. And then the last time I was in there was very famous. I was actually on the news in Buffalo when we were stuck outside Buffalo on the ice for like 3 or 4 days. So that was an interesting one too. Nick actually brought out some food for us. He did a grocery run. That was great. So anyway, continue on. The picture to the right, that is the Algoma Buffalo, and we are in the Saginaw River. Now, that is the Lafayette Bridge, which is currently under construction. So it's going to be under construction for a while, as I understand. I've spoken to some people that have been in the Bay City area through my YouTube channel, and they're happy that it's getting replaced, but it's going to be a while. Now, what they've done here is they've built these steel cofferdams, so they've essentially created a watertight area around where they're going to be putting the new bridge towers, or bridge supports, whatever they're called, the structure of the bridge. And so that area is narrower than what it normally is because they need to give themselves room to build within it. Now, going through here is a pretty, I'm on high alert going through this one because there's people still working there and they're on the barges. I didn't see anybody working down in the cofferdams when I went by, but I can't rule that out completely. So if the ship were to touch one of these, I'm pretty sure the ship would win. It's just it's a law of mass. You know, you got, I think the Buffalo's 10,000 or something tons pushing in on it. It's going to give. So it's there's a lot of things like this that happen that aren't regular, but we always need to be prepared for. And it's the spice of the Great Lakes. No two trips are ever the same. You could go to the same dock 100 times, and you could make that dock 100 different ways, and that's just how it is. There's no recipe for it. There's just good planning and then being able to adapt when things don't go the way that you want. Now, I've showcased some of that, or at least I've tried in a lot of my YouTube videos where I'll say, you know, this didn't work out. I'm actually working on one now where I thought the current was going to push us to the north. It actually pushed us to the south. So I had to adjust my approach as we went in. But if you don't make allowances for these kinds of things on the Great Lakes, it's going to catch you. And the fallout from a mistake on one of these is usually in the $500,000 to $1 million total cost if you mess something up. And that's the game that we're playing every day out there on the water as a pilot, or like that man that was talking last month. He does some of these challenging places. He does the Saginaw River. He does Holland, Grand Haven, Muskegon, Chicago. He does all those places, right? The St. Mary's River. So he's not safe from it because he's a pilot. He has all this as well. And I think he touched on this too. Dealing with the international crew sometimes isn't as easy as you would think. But yeah, I love these river boats. I love doing all this stuff, and yeah, it's really great. So not only do we have challenges in rivers with traffic and people, out on the lake cannot be easy sometimes as well. You can't tell, but I'm on that picture to the left. I'm on the Cuyahoga, and that wave is as high as the deck. If I didn't have the ship pointed the way that I did, those waves would be washing across the deck. And that picture to the right, that's on the Manitoulin, and that's me going across Lake Superior in a snowstorm and heading into the wind. So depending on the time of season that you're in, it has different challenges. So the summertime you can get away with a lot more than you can in the winter, only because the ship ices up in the winter. There's this phenomenon called freezing spray. So the water is obviously still liquid, but when it splashes up and lands on the ship, it'll freeze to the steel of the ship everywhere, and we'll start growing ice. And I say growing because it'll start off thin, and then it can be inches or even a foot thick. I've seen some ships going across the Atlantic, and they get feet. So that's something that I'm always cautious of. I always see on these Facebook pages people ask, "Oh, why are all the ships stopped?" and all this stuff. Usually, you can answer that question yourself if you pull up the weather on the lake and you see that it's pretty windy out there, 30, 40, 50 knots. That's probably what they're doing. So not only is there the risk of icing, also if you're rolling, things that are secured can break loose. Actually, I was on a ship. This is many years ago. We were in, where were we? We were in the South Pacific somewhere. Anyway, we're going across the South Pacific. These passenger ships I used to work on, they had we had our own forklift trucks on them. They weren't the big ones, but you'd stand on the back and you can drive them around, and that's how we moved the luggage and the provisions and things around the ship. Anyway, so we have these forklift trucks, and they're all lashed down on deck 4, and we also, in the interest of saving space, all the glass bottles and glassware that's damaged, it all gets crushed up and stored into these big bags. And I mean, they're huge. Like, these bags are 6 feet tall and 6 feet wide. It's a 6 foot cube of crushed glass inside of this canvas bag. And then also down there are the hydraulically operated shell doors. So I was on a ship once, and we were rolling pretty good in the South Pacific. One of these forklift trucks broke loose. Forklift truck broke loose, started, as you could expect, going back and forth across deck 4. And then they had one of these crushed glass bags nearby. And the forklift truck, moving back and forth, tore open this crushed glass bag. So now we got a forklift truck going back and forth, crushed glass everywhere, and we're still rolling. And then the forklift truck struck one of the shell doors. It didn't pierce it, but it dented it enough that water was kind of seeping in when we did a dip. So now we got forklift truck rolling back and forth, crushed glass everywhere, and everything soaked. So weather's not something that I mess around with. I've seen a lot of nasty things happen because of weather. I've seen a lot of people get hurt because of weather. So that's not a risk that I'd take anymore. And there's a point in every captain's life, especially early on, like I had, where you think that everything's going to be okay and it's not so bad, and then it's way worse. And then you learn to build a system that keeps you out of the stuff that you don't want to be into. My hang on, just let me see what the next slide is. Yeah. Okay, so my big weather moment realization as captain was in Lake Michigan. We were going. This is right after that picture that I showed previously. We were going to Green Bay. We had a load of salt on, and it was windy. Now, I didn't think it was going to be that bad, but the forecast sometimes isn't 100% accurate either. Now, I've learned to build a tolerance into when I make decisions about going out into weather, and this is exactly why. I was on the Cuyahoga going across the northern part of Green Bay. We came across Lansing Shoal. We're headed over to, I think it's Rock Island or whatever it's called, to get into Green Bay. And we had 12, 14 footers all the way across. We had water rolling across the deck there. Now, the wind was out of the south, so it was pushing all the water up from Lake Michigan, and we were right at the end of the what we call the fetch, right? So the fetch is the distance of water or whatever that the wind is blowing across. So we're right at the end of the fetch, and I adjusted the heading. I didn't sleep that night, but I managed to adjust the heading so that the way the waves were reaching the ship and pushing on us, We weren't rolling that much and we weren't pitching that much. So we were on an angle to the waves. And usually you can find a place like that. The downside is that when you're if you're on a ship that has a weaker hull or a less stiff hull, there's a lot of flexing that can happen. And if anyone's, I don't know if you some people were in high school or elementary school, you bend a spoon back and forth a few times and then it just pulls apart. That can happen on ships too, right? It's the same sort of bending back and forth motion. And you can tell which ships have been through the worst weather sometimes because they flex more. The middle of the ship gets a little bit weaker. And I knew this because the Mississauga and the Cuyahoga were both similarly built, right? So not exactly the same, but they were pretty similar. And they were built around the same time. And I could put what was it? So the Mississauga, I would put when I was loading that one, I'd put 900 to 1,000 tons in the middle, and on the Cuyahoga, I'd put 3,000 or 3,400 tons in the middle, and that just goes to show the difference in the strength of the hull between the two ships. And the Mississauga, when we were out in the weather, that thing would flex quite a bit more than the Cuyahoga did. So I don't know if that's exactly the reason why. There could be structural steel that was done on the Cuyahoga that wasn't done on the Mississauga. It could be lots of things, but that's usually a result from something getting beat up. I won't go on the Michipicoten yet, but I have a feeling that that was sort of what happened there too. So anyway, we're out in Lake Michigan going across. I had the heading set just right so that we weren't rolling a whole lot, we weren't pitching a whole lot, and we were making our way across. And all I could think to myself for the several hours that it takes us to get from Lansing Shoal to the Rock Island is we can't turn around because if I get stuck in the trough, um, I may not be able to get out. So if I tried to turn around and go back and I put the ship beam onto the waves, I may not be able to turn the ship back out, and we may just end up rolling for the rest of the night until we can somehow, some way get turned around. So I knew I couldn't go back, and if all I could think of going across was if we lost the engine, even for a few minutes, we were going to be in big trouble. So that was a day where I made a clear decision to have clear limitations for myself and weather. I had to have a way to get out. I had to have abort points. I had to have places that I could go. And if I couldn't meet all those criteria, I wasn't going. And that's one of the great things about being captain is that I make the decisions for myself. Whereas when I was first mate, I had to run by what the captain said. So I find being captain a lot less stressful than being first mate because I do the things that I'm comfortable with and not the things that someone else is comfortable with. So that's something that's pretty different between the two ranks there. And then something not a lot of people talk about is the human element on board. So that picture on the left, that is a magnetic compass hood that I'm wearing on my head. Uh, we were going through I think this is from Round Island Passage, me and my wheelsman, Dr. Dillon. We call him Dr. Dillon because he was pre-med and then he dropped out and he started working on ships. So me and Dr. Dillon, we had a great time on that Mississauga. And there's a lot of great people out there, and it's not all work. There's a lot of fun and a lot of camaraderie, and there's a lot of it's almost like family, but almost not. But you get to know everybody. You're in such tight living quarters with everybody else. You get to know everybody's fears, what they love doing, what they hate doing, and you get to know a lot about what kind of family they have, or if they have any, what they enjoy doing at home. And there's a lot of you learn a lot about people, sometimes more than you would want. And something that I learned going up to captain from first mate that I really wasn't prepared for is how much of a, I don't want to say, how much of a mentor and kind of almost like a guidance counselor that I had to be. There's a lot of people that have a lot of problems at home, whether it's family problems, problems with a spouse, problems with addiction, problems with, could be anything. And in order for me to manage the crew well and effectively, those are things that usually I find out along the way. And sometimes it's not me probing, but I'll get people come up to my office and, hey Cap, can we talk for a minute? And they close the door and then, oh, my wife wants to leave me because I spend too much time out here on the boat. But if I go home, I don't have any money because I won't have a job. And there's there's so many different things, and nothing that I've done in the past kind of prepares you for that aspect of the job of being a captain. Um, the nickname is the old man, and it's no strange thing that that's what a lot of people used to call their dad. I got to go talk to the old man. That's my dad, right? Because I find myself a lot of time. I don't feel like their dad, but I almost feel like it's kind of they're kind of pushing that sort of responsibility onto me, right? I was like, oh, I'm late behind bills. What can I do? Or, you know, I need to get off because I got a wedding to go to. I don't know how to do it, and should I get off or should I do this or you know, uh, even now with the Lower Lakes thing, right? I've had a ton of people. Well, for those of you who don't know, Algoma Corporation has bought Lower Lakes Towing, or they're in the process of buying them. I don't know where they are in the transaction, but it's happening. And because I worked at Lower Lakes Towing for so long, I have so many people from Lower Lakes Towing calling me, asking me, well, what should I do? Should I go to Algoma? Should I find jobs somewhere else? Should I quit sailing? What do I do now? What's it like at Algoma? And I don't want to make these decisions for people, but at the same time, I don't want them to be blindsided. So I try to give them all the information that they need in order to make an informed decision. But there's nothing that really prepares you for that level of trust from your crew into yourself, and that level of uh, kind of guidance that people expect from you, especially when I'm not a guidance counselor. To me, I'm just some idiot still driving a boat around the lakes having a great time. I'm 12 years old when I'm up there driving. But that's the real challenge to Great Lakes shipping is the people, and helping your crew be the best crew that they can be, helping each individual crew member be the best person that they can be, trying to get them to move up the ranks if that's what they want, or improve skills that may be already required by their current position. That's the big job. Now, I showed you guys pictures of me taking a 630-foot ship through a 90-foot gap where there's construction all the way around and there's people working. And if I mess up, then someone's going to have a really bad day. That's the easy part. Taking the ship through the St. Mary's River in the ice, steering on the ranges, that's the easy part. The hard part is when you got guys coming to you and their wife's leaving them, or their kid's sick. I had one guy, his daughter woke up one day and couldn't see, blind. What do I tell him? You know, Anyway, we worked him through it. I did the best that I could. I saw him recently. It turns out it was some sort of curable thing that had happened. But he's still doing his job. He's moved up a position now. I saw him recently. His daughter's doing great. But that was a pretty scary time for him. Pretty scary time for me too. Because what do I tell this guy? I don't know anything about it. Anyway, we talked it out. We worked through it. I helped him maybe not be as busy as he could have been at that time. But if we drop a bunch of stuff, bunch of requirements on a guy like that, a bunch of responsibility, and work him, to the bone, and he's going through that at home, how effective is he going to be? And not only that, how safe is he going to be? Is he going to be able to go home in the same condition that he arrived to the ship? Is he going to be distracted and hurt himself? So I had a talk with the first mate at the time, and we changed his responsibilities on board a little bit, and that helped. I think I don't know. Anyway, his daughter's all good now. She's getting ready to go off to university, and he got himself promoted. But nobody tells you that that's coming. Nobody. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, there's a lot of responsibility, but driving the boat's the easy bit. And now this is some of the fun stuff that I've done. So you see there in the top left corner, I've got a green hard hat on. Now, if anybody here has ever worked in some sort of construction job or any kind of job where you need to be wearing safety equipment, the guy in the green hard hat is usually the new guy. When I worked at Lower Lakes, I would wear the green hard hat around because no one thought that the captain of the ship would wear the green hard hat. And so I called it, that was my camouflage. When we were in port and we had people coming on, I put the green hard hat on and nobody ever wanted to talk to me. It was great. And then we got that was a nice picture take by Mike. Windsor Aerial Photography, I think is his site. That bottom one of me on the Manitoulin. I see Mike down there often. Mike does a great job. Mike, not only does he take great pictures of ships, Mike also does a lot of aerial inspections. So these are some of the people that I've got to meet through the YouTube channel, through common interests and stuff like that, and it's really been great. Um, and then in the top there, that's some of the sites that we get to see. That's on the Buffalo going up the Livingston Channel. I mean, you know, we get front row seats to a lot of beautiful weather phenomena and scenery and those sort of things. So there's meeting great people, seeing great things, and then there's always a challenge somewhere. So that picture all the way to the right, it doesn't look like much, but that was on the Cuyahoga, and that's the south end of the North Slip at Sarnia. So what we're doing there is there's a construction company that went in and they built that steel, corrugated steel box around out into the water to build a new dock. But then they needed to fill it in with stone. So why should they haul everything there by dump truck when you can just get a ship to pull in and fill it up? So that's what we did. I did one trip, and then a friend of mine, my relief at the time, he did the next trip. So what we did is we put a couple wires on the shore, we left the engines on, and we unloaded and filled up that corrugated steel box with stone from the North Channel. Now, the challenge there was we couldn't touch the dock. So you remember me saying about that bridge in Lafayette? If I touch either one of those cofferdams, someone's going to have a really bad day. Well, if I touch that dock while we're unloading, they would have to re-square it up, and there was all kinds of stuff that they would have had to do. So haul stone down from the North Channel, tie up to basically one bit, and I think we had the other one on like a truck or something, big truck, and don't touch the dock and unload. Simple, right? The thing is they didn't tell us that that's what we had to do until we got there. So I'm pulling in and I'm looking at this thing and like, I better not touch this thing. And I call the guy on the dock. He's like, oh yeah, don't touch it. We need you to unload into it. And nobody told me until we got there. And then we had to make a plan and we did it. We did it. And now that dock is there. You can go down there in Sarnia and see it. And you can see a little bit of Tommy and my handiwork. We filled that whole thing in. So a lot of responsibility, a lot of jobs that maybe you don't see, a lot of challenges that maybe you don't see. And that's sort of my crash course on what it's like being a Great Lakes freighter captain. It's more than people realize in a lot of ways, and I wouldn't want to do anything else. That's the last slide that I got for you today. That's the Cuyahoga unloading in Thunder Bay Mobile X dock. I think that's that one up I think it's the Kaministiquia River. Anyway, yeah, that was an interesting place. I had the back all the way up there. They had a lot of current, almost took out that marina off there to the other side. We were backing in there and the current caught the stern and I had to go out and back in again. It happens. But didn't touch anything. Nobody got hurt. We delivered the cargo safely. And I call that one a win. Anyway, that's it for me. That's all I have for the presentation. Does anyone have any questions that are burning in them that they want to ask? Is there anything that maybe I didn't cover that I might have, should have? I'll take any questions you got now. That is a very good question. Do we have problems with pleasure craft getting too close to the ship, and how far away should they stay? They shouldn't get close. So I talked about this a few times, and I've showed this a couple times on my YouTube channel. There is a thing called, well, it's bank suction and squat. So as the ship moves through the water, it's not, when a ship moves through the water, it's not exactly how you think it does. It doesn't, the water doesn't just split and the ship passes through. So what happens there? Oh yeah, lots of questions. This is great. I'm going to get to every one of these. Hang on, just let me do this one about the pleasure craft. So the water doesn't just split and allow the ship to pass through. You have to think of it more like sand. If you think of it more like sand, it's easier to understand. So as the ship pushes through, it pushes the sand up in the front, and then the sand parts, and then it comes around to fill in behind it. So the water is moving around the ship just as much as the ship is moving through the water. So the faster the faster the ship is going, the faster that effect is. So you can if you're on a pleasure craft and you get close enough to the ship, it will pull you in against the hull, and that's the hydrodynamic effect that's going on there. Now, I would say stay as far away as you can safely, because not only is that suction force, the hydrodynamic suction force, going to be a problem for you, there's also other things that come off of ships. So there's sea suctions in the bottom. If the ship is stopped, there's ballasting operations. All the cooling water for the engines is run through hull fittings. So we take lake water, it comes up to be our cooling water, and then it's pumped back out. So there can be areas of hot water depending on where you are. That's pretty rare though, but it can happen. There is suctions below the water line that will pull you in, especially if we're ballasting. If we're taking in ballast water, they have these things called sea chests. They're great big rectangles with grating across them. Call them sea chests. So they pull water in from outside and fill the ballast tanks up while we're unloading. So if we're unloading, those suctions are probably running. And usually where these boats go, these river class boats go, we use there's two different ones. There's a low suction, which is down near the bottom of the ship, and then there's a high suction one. Now the problem with the high suction one is that if the ship is high enough, it can suck in air, and then we lose suction on the pumps. We get airlocked. That's why the bottom suctions are great. But the bottom suctions, their problem is sometimes we're so close to the bottom that they just pull up mud and then they don't work. So it could be one or the other. So don't get too close. Also, I've seen guys throw things off here. They're not supposed to. That we have very strict laws on both sides of the border for pollution control and all this stuff. But some of these personalities we get on here, I've seen guys, get upset and throw a hard hat off or drop something over the side. It happens. It's not supposed to. We really try not to, but I'd be remiss if I didn't tell people that this can happen, right? I've had it happen to me. I was in Bruce Mines, and we trimmed the boat, like finished the load, we trimmed the boat, and I'm usually in a boat when I was first mate going up and down because the dock is not great for reading drafts. Um, and somebody dropped something over the side and it caught me on the hard hat. So it happens to everybody. So don't get too close to them. There's hydrodynamic effects in the water that you can't see. There's stuff happening under the water that you can't see. And especially if you're going near some of these older boats or some of these newer boats that maybe run heavy fuel oil. They have some of them have steam heaters. I'm not too up on the new stuff, but I remember we had steam heaters on the Cuyahoga, and there's pressure relief valves built into the side of the ship. So these older boats, if you get too close to them, especially around the back end, there could be a blast of steam coming your way if the pressure relief valve goes off. So yeah, don't get too close to them. It's for your safety as well as ours. Especially in the rivers, you don't want to get too close to the rivers because of the segmented rivers. So the Calumet, Maumee, Saginaw, all those places have the thruster running, right? If I push one way in the thruster, if you're next to that thruster, you're going to go for a ride. And usually I'm not on the side where the wash comes out. I'm usually on the other side because I'm trying to push it into something. So I may not see you. Usually I have a good crew and there's a spotter on deck that will let me know, but it can happen. I was on a ship years ago in the Cuyahoga River, and nobody was watching on the discharge side of the thruster, and a small pleasure craft went by the thruster when the captain put it on, and he ended up on the bank completely out of the water. So if you see these things in the river, get by them as quickly as you can. Usually, if we're in places like the Maumee or the Cuyahoga River or any place like that, there's a guy on deck. Talk to him. Ask him which side you can go around, right? They'll tell you. Ask them when it's safe for them to go around, because he'll tell you, because he'll call me on the radio and he'll say, hey, Cap, we got this pleasure craft here. He wants to get by us. Can you go by? And then I know that you're going by, so I know I'll watch for you. But yeah, don't get too close, especially if you're not talking to someone. I put the radio, if you're interested in talking to one of these ships because of a safety issue, don't just call us anytime. But if it's a safety issue, I put the radio channels on my time lapse videos where we are, and that's usually the channel that we're monitoring. So you can find that there. If not, you can go to Radio Aids Marine Navigation, and there's all kinds of places. But on the YouTube channel, the time lapses in the rivers, I'll put what radio station we're monitoring if there's a VTS. Otherwise, call us on 16 if you got a radio. Just it's better to be safe and communicate than to just try and sneak by and end up on the bank. Oh, there's Chuck. Okay, Chuck. Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate that one. Now, for those of you who don't know, Chuck is probably my first subscriber on YouTube, and I've been talking to Chuck for years. And yeah, he's kept me going a few times when I felt like giving up. So thanks, Chuck. Thoughts on Grand Haven having to back out of the channel? Jeff, I had to back out of Grand Haven one time in 6 feet of visibility. And I know that it was 6 feet because as I was backing out, I had the second mate on the stern. His name was JP, French guy, great guy. He drives the Canadian Coast Guard hovercraft now in the Seaway. I had JP on the stern, and we were backing out. When I left the dock, it was clear, but then the bank just came in, and we were part way out, and we couldn't see anything. So I just kept going. JP was on the stern, and I was talking to JP. I was watching the ectis because there was nothing to look at out the window, and I'm backing up. We're doing about half a knot, so we're just going nice and easy. I said, JP, there's a red buoy coming up. Let me know when you see it. And time was going by, and we're getting closer and closer and closer. And then I called him again a few more times. JP, make sure you let me know when you see the red buoy. Oh yeah, I will. And then all of a sudden he pipes up. Oh yeah, I see the red buoy 6 feet off the starboard side. So Grand Haven can be challenging. There's not a whole lot of buoys there. The hardest part about Grand Haven is actually getting in through the piers loaded. There's a bit of current. All the lakes have a natural current to them, and that can change depending on wind and other things. But actually getting in through the piers is the harder part because that north pier tends to silt in, and it'll shallow up. There's been ships that have grounded out on those Eastern Lake Michigan docks because they've shallowed up. Now, I will say this, the U.S. Coast Guard, whoever they have doing all these surveys, they do a great job surveying all of these ports and keeping the information available for us, because I look at this before we go in. And so they do a great job. There's always some dredging action going on out there, and they can't be cheap. So there's a lot of effort to keep these ports open to ships like ours, and it doesn't go unnoticed. But yeah, Grand Haven is a great spot. It's a fun little place to get in and out of. It's a nice long turn. The people there are really great. Yeah, and the beaches there look fun. It's unfortunate that we only spend about 4 or 5 hours in there, and then we have to leave again. But it'd be nice to get out to the beach once or twice. Sheila, how often do you need Coast Guard icebreakers in the winter? Well, wherever the ice is pretty thick, usually we'll need one. It does happen quite often. This winter was special, to say the least. These Coast Guard icebreakers are really great. They do a great job, both sides. The U.S. Coast Guard and the Canadian icebreakers, they do a great job keeping everything moving. Now, I would prefer to have an icebreaker everywhere I go because especially when it's all the way frozen across, it's nice having that bit of safety, because it's happened to me so many times where you just get stuck and now you just go wherever the ice goes. You better hope that it's fast to the shore so that it doesn't drag you aground next, because that's where you're going to go. You just go where the ice goes, and there's nothing you can do about it sometimes. These more modern Lakers that you're seeing built, they're not that great in the ice, and it's because of the bow. The bow is so round. I kind of compare it to driving a bulldozer rather than an icebreaker where it's like a knife. Now, the shape of the bow and the power that you have in the ship, they both go hand in hand with what you're able to handle as far as ice goes. And the Cuyahoga had a very sharp bow. It had that great steel beam right down the center of the bow there, and it was really great for cutting ice if we had the power to push through it. It only had 3,600 horsepower. Now, to compare that, the Algoma Buffalo has 2 engines, and each of those engines have the same amount of horsepower as the one singular Cuyahoga engine, and they're about the same size. Buffalo's a bit wider, but they're about the same size. So yeah, the Buffalo actually pushed through a fair bit of ice, a lot more than I was expecting. But yeah, having an icebreaker on site is fantastic. They had a newer reporting system this year that we used, where we filled out a daily worksheet about where we were going, what our ETAs to specific areas would be, and if we wanted an icebreaker. And of course, we always wrote in, yes, we want an icebreaker, because having that icebreaker with us when we're going through some of these areas like Streets of Mackinac, Green Bay, any of these places is just, it makes life a lot easier, because we are not designed for breaking ice. In fact, when I was going through some of the documents on the Algoma Buffalo, there's a specific page that I found in the registry that said specifically that we're not ice classed. We have no ice rating and we're not allowed. So yeah, having these icebreakers is great. And they're great people on there. I still talk on occasion to some of them that I've met over the years, but they're great. Great presentation today, Todd. Thank you, Todd. Yeah, looking forward to getting back on that Saginaw River. Like I said, I really like that river. Now, I do have a video coming up later this month where I had I take the money that I bring in from the YouTube channel and I use it to buy new equipment to improve the channel. So one of my more recent purchases has been a program that takes the GPS data from the GoPro that I'm using, and it will plot a map of where we are. It will also count at the bottom how many miles we've done in that time lapse. And then in the bottom left corner, it says there's a speedometer in knots. That'll tell you how fast we're going. So watch for that. That's coming. But yeah, the Saginaw River, I'm looking forward to getting back there again. I hope they finish that Lafayette Bridge soon. Susan, this has been fascinating. Well, I'm happy you enjoyed it there, Susan. That one's hidden. How difficult is... Oh, this is Andrea. Hi, Andrea. Glad you made it. How difficult is it for you to go from ship to ship and adapt to how they handle? I'm guessing they're all different. Yes, Andrea, every ships are like a fingerprint, right? Everyone's different. Doesn't matter if they're on the same person. Everyone's different. So how can I describe this? Now, even ships built in the same class, the same shipyard, by the same people are going to handle and maneuver a little bit differently. They all have their own personality, like the soul of the ship. Now, how do you adapt to that when you know that you're going to a different ship? Well, first you have to start by what I like to call emptying your cup, right? If you have a full cup, nothing else fits in. So if I go in with all the knowledge that I had from the Manitoulin and now I'm going to the Algoma Buffalo, I got to forget everything I know about the Manitoulin, empty the cup, start over and start putting things in. Now, what I usually do is I start off slow and I'll try different things. So I use anchor time to my advantage. If I know that we're going to anchor, I'll just see how fast I can get from 12 knots down to 1 knot without using any engine. So we'll be going along and I'll just put the engine to stop and see how long it takes, and also measure how far we go, because there's a difference between what's on the maneuvering poster and what the ship actually does. Another thing I do is I'll start off with higher wind tolerances than what I may normally do. And then I slowly bring that tolerance down until I start to maybe have to put a little bit extra effort into the ship handling part. Now, I've read a few books on ship handling, some really great, some okay. But the best thing I've ever read from a ship handling book was the sign of a great ship handler is never getting into a situation that requires great ship handling. And that is kind of my motto when it comes to ship handling. If I am working too hard for something, I either didn't plan it out very well, or I need to raise the tolerance a little bit, because safety of the ship, safety of the crew, that's very important. And if I'm getting into somewhere where I'm really having to put maximum effort in all the time, maybe I need to adjust my tolerances. So I have limits that I set for myself on different things. I do try to incrementally bring them down until I find a sweet spot for that ship. But that's something that I do. Maybe not everybody does it. Maybe other people do other things, and but that's what I've done personally. Going from, I've been on the Robert S. Pearson, the Kaministiquia, the Cuyahoga. I've handled the Mississauga, the Saginaw, the Algoma Buffalo, the Endeavor, and the Innovator, and the Discovery. So a few boats there that I've been on, and that's just kind of how I operate and how I approach it, because I know that it's going to be different. I don't know if it's going to be better or worse. So I start off with higher tolerances and slowly bring them back down. Do you have a personal preference in terms of the type of ship that you're on as far as handling goes? Well, fast pitch response is something that I really like, because I like being able to just fly in somewhere and then crank at the stern. I do like the Algoma Buffalo stern thruster. That thing is very powerful, and it opens up. I'm not sure if it makes it more maneuverable, but it opens up more opportunity for me to do different things. So something that I started doing in the canal, in the Welland Canal, was to I'll be doing what's the speed on there? 6 knots. I get up to 6 knots, and then I'll start slowing down 4 knots to the end of the wall if nobody's coming out, and then I put the engine half astern, and then I can steer with the stern thruster going into the lock. It's great. It's fast. It's efficient. Safe. I have lots of control. But yeah, I like that. But as far as that, I'm not sure if there's really a preference there. It's just different things that I enjoy. Forward or aft pilot house. It's the same thing, Andrea. It's we're not going to be seeing the forward pilot houses anymore. I don't think. Now, reasoning for that is probably due to cost, because you have double of everything, right? So when I was on the Cuyahoga and the Mississauga and the Saginaw, there's two sewage treatment plants, there's two water heaters, there's two ventilation unit systems, there's two living quarters, right? It's everything's doubled up. On these aft end ones, it's one for everybody, right? Because everybody lives in this column. So it's not really cost effective. I didn't really gain a whole lot of, let's say, ship handling effectiveness being on a forward end versus an aft end. They're both it's kind of 6 one, half dozen the other, right? So there's no real preference for me there, but I don't think we're going to be seeing that anymore unless somebody decides they want to spend a whole whack of money and do it. But I'm not sure that's in the cards. Jill, very forward. Yeah, glad you enjoyed this one, Jill. It was my pleasure coming on here. I'm glad that the visitor center had me. Visitor center. In my experience as a sailor and as a captain, what personality traits make for a successful sailor? So the personality traits that make for a successful sailor is someone that's not afraid to ask the dumb questions. And what do I mean by that? It's somebody that doesn't want, they don't think so much of themselves that they don't want others to think that they're dumb, right? Um, I have people ask me all kinds of questions when they get on the boat. I've had a guy come on the boat. He's like, he's been on for 2 months. He couldn't tie a bowline because he never asked. He didn't want everyone to think that he couldn't tie one. Whereas if he just asked when he got on, we don't expect you to know anything, because we know that there's not really anything like this ashore. So unless you've worked on boats, we expect you to be at zero. So ask the dumb questions, ask all the questions, make sure that don't think too highly of yourself is another one. We get people coming on and they come on for like a week, and then they all of a sudden they know everything and you can't tell them anything. It's not, this shipping isn't a solo project. It's a teamwork at all times. And I've tried to highlight that through my videos, and I tell everyone the same thing. If you can't be part of a team and know that you need to push others up for you to succeed, then it's may not be the place for you. Now, we get problems with some people. They they get into this, especially some of the more senior guys, and they get into this attitude where they think the ship stops if they're not around. They just have to do everything, right? That's another pretty toxic place to be at, because you know they they think so highly of themselves. The ship still goes on. If I wasn't there, there'd be somebody else there, and the ship would still be moving, right? Don't think that you're the only thing between chaos and a safe transit. Just try to help out wherever you can. If you see something wrong, say something, right? If you're walking down the deck and all the hatch clamps are off, but you don't say anything, and then all of a sudden the storm kicks up and the hatches shift around, and well, why didn't you say something 2 days ago when we had, sunny 30-degree weather and 5 knots of wind? Now it's, 40 knots of wind. We're barely hanging on. Now we got to try and get all these hatch clamps on. if you see something, say something. So you really got to be self-aware. You got to know that you don't know stuff. You got to know that you got to ask the questions. And like I said, if you come in and your cup's empty, you're probably going to do okay. But if you come in and your cup's full, you already know everything. Those are the guys that don't last. And it's I've seen a lot. Actually, the shortest time that I've had somebody on the boat was about 30 minutes. It was an engineer. It was in Kingsville. He joined the ship in Kingsville. He came up the ladder. He went down to the engine room and then left the engine room, went back down the ladder, and that was the last we heard from him. So it's everybody's different, but there's a certain type of people that succeed and do well, and then you get some of these that don't do very well. Talk a little bit about the channel and why I started it. Okay, so the YouTube channel. So I started the YouTube channel because we are in a labor shortage in Canada. We're having not a lot of people interested in the career, maybe for different reasons. Most of the time, it's that they just don't know. So I've noticed before I started the channel that a lot of people that I would talk to, they say, well, what do you do for work? I said, oh, I work on the Great Lakes. I drive boats, or I load boats or drive boats or whatever. And they said, oh, I didn't know you could do that in Canada. It's like, well, we live in Windsor and the river's right there. You didn't know you could get a job on one of those boats? No idea. So awareness was a big one. Another one was I got a wife and 2 kids. And my wife sailed with me on passenger ships for a long time. She worked in the shops, and I was in the wheelhouse. So she knows what it's like. But my kids see me come and go. I go for long periods of time. They don't know where I go. So I wanted to be able to show them something that this is where their dad goes when he's not at home. And then that kind of caught on with some of the other crew members early on, especially when I was during my Lower Lakes time. They would go home and then they would show their family, this is where I went, this is what we did, this is where we were, right? And so giving people that ability to share something that maybe wasn't shareable before was kind of great. And then something that not maybe why I started the channel, but this has been something that's really kept me going, is I get a lot of questions about how to get into the industry, where people need to go to upgrade, or how do they upgrade, or obtain new licenses and new things. And information on this industry is notoriously hard to find. Now, I'm less involved in the US side of licensing. I've slowly been kind of diving into a little bit as people have been asking me questions. I talked to a bunch of people on these ASC boats, and I'll ask them questions about where to find certain information, and they help me out. They've been really great to me. But the Canadian side, it's hard to find. So, for example, I have a crew member, deckhand, right? They want to move up to be a mate, right? So you have to get your bridge watch, and then you have to go do some exams, and then you can get your officer of the watch license, be third mate. They had already gone to cadet school, right? And they hadn't. I forget what happened. Something had happened, and they didn't quite finish, and then they just started working full time. So they had already gone to cadet school. They already had their bridge watch. They wanted to get their license now, which they can. But this crew member didn't know which exams they had to write. They didn't know what the syllabus was of these exams that they needed to write in order to get this license was. So I went out and I went on the Transport Canada website, and because I've been through all of it myself, I knew exactly where to find everything. So I went through, found all the information, printed it all off from Transport Canada. I handed it to this person, and I wrote down the website of where they could find it. I printed it all. This person was so happy they started crying, because they had been trying for years to figure out how to move up, and they didn't want to be a deckhand forever. There was tears, right? And it's things like that bother me. It shouldn't be that hard to move up in an industry where there's a labor shortage. So that's something that's really kept me going, is sharing information about what we do, problems we have, where we can find information. I get back to everybody on the YouTube channel. So if you ask me questions there, that's I'll answer. Just gotta Get on there and ask. Like I said, don't be afraid to ask the stupid questions, because once you ask, you're not stupid anymore. I asked all the stupid questions already. I tell this to my crew often. I'll say the difference between me and you is I failed more than you've tried, and that's the truth, right? Nobody knows how many exams I failed. Nobody knows how many times I've had to ask somebody where the forward part of the ship is, right? None of that. All they know, all they see now is captain of the ship. I started at 0-2. There was a day I didn't know the bow from the stern, but I asked the question, and I asked enough questions, and now I'm captain. So don't be afraid to ask the questions. Ask all the questions, because then you'll know, right? And information is valuable. Mary, am I going back to the Buffalo, a different ship? Probably Buffalo, I think. I'm going to be bouncing around a little bit this year, trying to get qualified for the Seaway, but yeah, I think I'm going to Buffalo this year. Details coming soon, Mary. William wanted to know when you'll be back on board. Buffalo should be fitting out middle of April, as far as I know. But I'm probably going to be joining the Discovery with my buddy Scotty and get some Seaway stuff done a little bit earlier. Mr. KOS. Oh, know your ships. Thanks, TJ. I'll send you some know your ships book. You know what? Those guys, I don't know if this is Roger or if this is Mr. Hankinson, but you guys do a great job with those know your ships books. Like, we have them on every one of our every lake I've ever been on has got a know your ships book on it, and we use it. Now, we may use it in a way that you may not expect. So when we're specifically in the St. Mary's River, there's the two locks. One's bigger than the other because one takes the footers and the other one doesn't. So the Mac lock is restricted to 76 feet wide. That's the restrictions that has been placed on that lock. So if you're 78 feet wide, you can't go on that one. So when we're up there and we're trying to line up traffic to see where our position is going to be as we're coming up the river, a lot of time, if we don't know what a ship is, we'll pull the know your ships book out and we'll say, okay, that's this ship. They're 78 feet wide. Okay, they're not getting the Mac lock, so we can get it. So we'll carry on. But if we got to burn time waiting for somebody, then it's much easier for us to slow down earlier rather than later and try and tread water. So it's easier for us to go slow than it is to stop. So that's one way. Another way is, sometimes you just want to see how fast somebody can go, in the river or whatnot. If they got more power, then maybe we want to let them by us and plan for an overtaking situation, right? It's kind of neat. But those know your ships books, we have them on every ship and we use them and we look at them. So great job for all you guys there at Know Your Ships. That's really fantastic. Paige, welcome, Paige. Thanks for coming. I'm glad that everyone found some sort of value with this. I know I sure did. I love talking about boats, but that's kind of obvious from my YouTube channel. So maybe if there's no more questions, I can turn it back over to the visitor center here, and they can wrap things up.
All right, I will take back the screen and just provide some updates on our visitor centers. All right, so in Duluth, we are currently still on our winter hours, which means we're open Friday, Saturday, Sunday from 10 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. And then starting the week of March 22nd, right before the Soo Locks open, we'll be open Thursday through Monday. We also have cell phone tours outdoors and virtual online tour of the visitor center. At the Soo Locks Visitor Center, the visitor center is still closed, but they have special events for the opening of the locks for the season. There's going to be a members only reception at the visitor center, but will feature light refreshments and a chance to mix and mingle with USACE leaders from the locks and New Lock Project, as well as people in the shipping industry. There's still time to join if you wish to attend. Go to soolocks.org for more information. The park at the Soo will be open at the locks from 11:30 p.m. until 1:30 a.m. to watch the first ship of the season enter at midnight. And then a public open house with cookies and coffee takes place in the visitor center from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. on March 25th. And just another reminder again of our next program in April. On April 2nd, we'll be exploring the Seaway, history from the Eisenhower Lock Visitor Center. So new visitor center on the Seaway, which will be interesting to learn about. And just a couple of sites and places to go for more information. Let's see here. Captain TJ, I had one last question for you. So you mentioned that you went to school in Sarnia, and is that correct? Sarnia?
Owen Sound.
Okay. Did you have knowledge of the Great Lakes shipping industry when you went to school?
No, zero.
Okay.
Started from zero. I saw it as a post-secondary education thing that was in this
Mhm.
book of all these colleges and universities I was going through. I was like, oh, I could drive a boat. I had no idea what I was getting into. Zero.
Well, you made a fantastic career for yourself, and thank you again for participating in our programs. I think I know it's hard to gauge people's reactions when everyone's on mute, but I can attest that I laughed several times throughout your program. So and
Yeah.
and got a lot of information out of it. So thank you very much again, and hope to see everyone next month. Take care, everyone. We're gonna
All
end the
right.
meeting.
Thank you.